Hello and thanks for clicking on this video. Today we're going to look at installing Linux from a USB stick. We'll go right through the process from finding the Linux distribution on the internet, downloading it, copying it onto a USB stick, and then booting from that to install it onto our computer. So if you fancy learning how to do this, stick around. Okay, to get started we're going to open our web browser and we're going to Google Balena Etcher, which is the tool that we're going to use to copy our Linux distribution onto the USB stick. So if you click this top entry, which is for the Balena Etcher tool, and on the page here we can see that we've got the green button there to download Etcher for Windows, both 32 and 64-bit by the look of it. So if we click on that, and we're going to save it to somewhere, so either your downloads or your desktop or somewhere where you know that it is. As you can see, to save a bit of time, I've already downloaded it, so I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to minimize my web browser. We're going to go to our downloads folder, and as you can see here we've got the Etcher set up. So if I double click that, and in a moment we should get a wizard open up. There we go, and click the license terms to agree to the license, and here we go, it's installing Etcher for us onto our computer. And let's minimize that out of the way. And there we go, we've got a shortcut on the desktop for Balena Etcher. And here we go, it's launched the program for us as well, which is even better. Let's just move that to the side for a moment. We're going to reopen our web browser, and this time we're going to do a search for Linux Mint. And this is the distro that we're going to download. It's a great distribution for both beginners and more advanced users alike. So it will be just the job to get us on our journey into Linux. So if you click the Linux Mint website, and on here on the home page, if we click the download link, and if we scroll down the page, we've got a choice of 3 different desktops in Linux. It's not like Windows where you only have the one desktop, you can actually have different types of desktops. Cinnamon is Linux Mint's very own desktop and one of the most popular ones, so we're going to go with that. We're going to download the 64-bit version because most computers these days are 64-bit. If you've got a really old machine you might need the 32-bit, but as I say, majority of people we're going to go for the 64. So if you click that, and now on this screen we're going to scroll down the list again, and you can see this is a list of what are called mirrors. So this is different servers around the world that are hosting the Linux Mint distribution. So if you look down the list and pick a server that is closest to where you live, so in my case that'll be the United Kingdom, so we just click the link to download the distribution like so. And again, you may have noticed the eagle-eyed amongst you, in my downloads folder earlier I've already downloaded Linux Mint because it is quite a big download, so to save some time I've already downloaded it, but obviously you'll click save and download the distribution. When you've finished we can close our web browser. We're going to come back to the Etcher tool. So as I say, if this was closed you'd just double click the link it created for us on the desktop, wait for it to launch, and in a second, there we go, we should have the software ready to copy our Linux distribution onto our memory stick. So if you click select image and browse to where you saved the distro that you downloaded, the ISO file, so in my case that's in downloads, and there we go, Linux Mint. And then if you click open, and now if you haven't already, at this point we need to make sure that we've put our USB memory stick into the computer. Now be aware, I would recommend you use, really, I mean there's no reason not to use at least a 16GB or bigger memory stick these days, as USB memory is pretty cheap. So I would say to be on the safe side, if you get a 16 gig or bigger stick, be aware that if you've already got one, anything that's on it, if you use it for this purpose, it will wipe what's already on there. So make sure that you've backed up anything off the stick first if you're going to repurpose an old USB stick. If it's a new one, obviously it doesn't matter. So insert that into your computer, and as you can see, it literally, let's just close the file explorer, it's found my SanDisk USB memory stick, and from here I can literally click flash, and we have to agree and say yes, we want to do that, and you can see it's starting. This process may take a little while. You can see it's not going too badly, but I'll pause the video and we'll come back when it's done to save you waiting. Okay, so as you can see, the flash has completed successfully, so we've now got Linux Mint on our USB stick, so we can close the window. The next step is to make sure that the USB memory stick is plugged into the computer you want to install Linux on. So if that's the machine you're currently working on, leave it where it is. If not, you can unplug it and put it in the computer you want to put Linux on to. Before we can install Linux on the machine, we need to find out which key on that computer allows us to boot from the USB stick. Now, unfortunately, this isn't always the same key from computer to computer, so I suggest if you're not sure and you don't already know what it is, if we launch a web browser, we can have a look on Google and find out what key we need. So let's say, for argument's sake, that you've got a Dell XPS 13 laptop. If you type the model into Google, followed by the words boot menu, and press enter, let's just get my highlighter pen. There we go. And we can see here at the top of the screen we've got somebody's listed that for a Dell XPS 13 at boot we need to press the F2 key, so that's listed right here, and that will allow us to enter the boot menu on that particular laptop. Now be aware, not all computers have a boot menu. You may have to actually go into the BIOS, as it mentions there on the line below, to change the boot order in the BIOS, or UEFI as it's now known. But either way, either through the boot menu or through the BIOS, we need to make sure that the USB stick is set first to boot so that we can install Linux from it. Also be aware that sometimes in a computer's BIOS there are a couple of other settings that we may need to change in order to get Linux to successfully install, such as, again listed here, we've got fast boot on the next line there, fast boot, so that might need to be turned off and set in this case to the thorough option, because fast boot is more suitable for Windows than Linux. You may also find that you need to disable secure boot, which is also in the BIOS, because again that was a feature that was designed for Windows and we're installing Linux. Whatever the case is, do a Google search, find out what settings you possibly need to change for your computer, and then boot your laptop or PC from the USB stick to install Linux. I'll get mine set up ready and I'll join you at the installation screen. See you in a moment. Right, so if you've successfully booted from your Linux USB stick, this should be the first screen that you see appear, the start of the Linux Mint setup. By default it's on Start Linux Mint. There will be a countdown timer which will time out and then automatically start the setup process. I've paused that just for the sake of the video so I can show you this startup screen, so I'm now going to manually choose Start Linux Mint. As I say, if you don't touch anything it'll do this automatically for you, so let's select Start Linux Mint. In a moment it should start to load the Linux Mint setup. So here we go, we've got the nice little Linux Mint logo appeared just to show us that it's booting up. And in a moment we should be seeing Linux Mint. Right, so here we go. So this is a nice feature of quite a few Linux distros. Although we haven't installed anything yet, so we've not actually touched our computer, it's booted into what's called a live environment. So as I say, if your computer has got Windows on it, Windows at the moment is still there, but what we can do in this live environment is just have a look round and familiarise ourselves with how Linux is going to look and appear, because to all intents and purposes this is the operating system. It's currently running off the USB stick rather than the hard drive, so because of that it will be a little bit slower, but you can see what we're going to end up with eventually. So what we want to do obviously though is to install it onto the computer or laptop itself and replace what's already on there, which is most likely Windows. Before you do that, obviously you want to make sure that there's nothing you want to keep on there. If there are any files or things that you need to keep off of your computer, your Windows computer, you want to make sure they're backed up before you start this process, because what we're about to do will remove anything off the computer and put Linux Mint in its place. So when you're happy to proceed and ready to do that, we're going to double click the Install Linux Mint, and this should start the setup wizard. So here we go. So we get a nice welcome screen to begin with, and it's already selected English for us. So literally from this screen we can click continue, and now you need to choose what area you're in. So this is for your keyboard layout. So I'm in the UK, so I select English UK, and you can see on the right hand side that it's also selected the English UK keyboard for me, and then I can click continue. And here it says it's getting ready, it's preparing to install Linux Mint, and it's got this nice option for us of installing third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware. So in other words, some of the things that might not work out of the box usually, if you've got say an NVIDIA graphics card or an AMD graphics card, or something that you might normally need extra drivers for, or you've got some Wi-Fi hardware in there, so something that an unusual chip or something that's a little bit different to make your Wi-Fi work. The nice feature here is that we can tick this box, and hopefully, even though some of this software is what's known as proprietary, so it's not open source like Linux, it will still install those little bits and pieces for us as an extra, so that all being well we can get up and running straight away as soon as the operating system is installed. It'll also put on Flash, so Adobe's Flash player and MP3 support and things like that. So it's a nice little option there just to put the third-party software on as part of the installation. So if you're happy to do that, which I'd suggest is a good idea, tick the box and click continue. And here we go. So this is a really important screen because this is telling the computer what we want to do for the installation. So in my case, I want to, it's the default option, erase the disk and install Linux Mint, and we've got a warning under there that this will delete all your programs, documents, photos, all of the other stuff that's currently on your computer, on your hard drive. It's going to erase everything. Now if, say for argument's sake, it's a laptop, and you take it out and about with you, it might also be handy to tick this box for the encrypting the operating system for extra security. So that might be a good option to tick that one. I'm not planning on taking this out and about with me, so I'm not going to bother, but that's a nice option if you want it. LVM, again, if you're planning on putting multiple hard drives into the machine and doing all fancy things with it, LVM is a nice option to have, but it's beyond the scope of this tutorial and not really necessary, so we won't bother with that one. Something else is, if you're an expert, you're probably not going to be watching this video anyway, but if you are, you can tick that, and that will give you the option to choose your partitions and sort it all out as you want to for yourself. But for most of us, it's sufficient to leave this default erase disk and install Linux Mint ticked, and then click install now. And it just gives you one final warning, because it is quite an important one, because you're about to overwrite your disk and lose anything that's on there. So we know we're happy, we've backed up, we've done whatever, and we're ready to go. So click continue. and here it's going to look for our region, and it's automatically detected that I'm in the UK, so that's good, so I don't need to change that, but you can select your region to suit if it's not got your region automatically, and then click continue. And this is where we're going to fill in our details, so I'm going to put my name down as Byte My Pi. My computer name, you can call it whatever you like, but I suggest, just for ease really, that you keep it all, I tend to keep it lowercase and all one word rather than splitting it up, because computers of old, yeah, it still doesn't like it. They don't like spaces on the computer name, so try and keep it all together, all one word. So I'm going to go Byte My Pi there as well. My username, I'm going to set that as Byte My Pi, and then I'm just going to give it a password that I can remember. And here you can choose, you can set it to log in automatically if you don't want to have to enter your password when you boot your computer up. Obviously that's not great from security, but it's up to you what you want to do. You can leave the default to require your password at login. And a nice little option here, if you didn't encrypt the whole disk, which you could have done earlier if you wanted to, you have the option here of just encrypting your home folder. So in other words, where your documents and things are kept, you can tick this box and encrypt that if you wish. So that's a nice extra security option there if that sort of thing appeals to you. So choose your options, fill in all the details and click continue. And here we go, so it's going to install Linux Mint for us. In fact, it's been doing it in the background, and as you can see, it's almost finished copying the files across already. So while it's doing this, there's this little slideshow up here that's saying welcome to Linux Mint, and it tells you a few things about the operating system. So you can wait as you're watching or waiting for the files to install. It will flick through automatically, or if you've read it and want to scan ahead, you can click this little arrow to jump to the next page. So this is quite a nice little feature. As the operating system is installing onto your computer, it just guides you through and shows you a few things to get you ready for when the operating system's up and running and ready to use. So it tells you a bit about it in advance, which is quite nice. So we've got browsing the web, so basically you've got Firefox, and it looks as if Netflix and YouTube and all those things, all that good stuff is already there, ready to go. You can skip ahead again on the little one. It starts to tell us more about music, so we've got the option to listen to music. So things like Spotify and Rhythmbox. Rhythmbox is the music player that's built into Linux Mint, so that's ready to load up with your music and audio files ready to go. If we skip through again, we've got the multimedia bases covered, so we can watch movies and videos. So we've got software, celluloid, MPV and good old VLC, the traffic cone, the media player, which that effectively plays anything you throw at it. It's got a lot of codecs in there ready to play your audio, your video, your multimedia content, so that's ready to go out of the box. If we click ahead again, you can manage your photos. So again, that's a nice feature that it's got some software, Pix, Drawing, GIMP, Inkscape. GIMP's one I personally use a lot. It's a great free alternative to the likes of Photoshop. You can do all sorts of wonderful things with that, and it's incredible that it's free software. It's can't recommend that one enough. It's very good. But again, you can see you've got some software built in, ready to go out of the box as soon as your operating system's installed to get you up and running. So if we click through, stay connected. So obviously the internet these days and computers, it's all about being connected to the World Wide Web, and we've got some software here, Skype, WhatsApp, Slack, Telegram, all of these services to get you up and running on the internet, available right from the desktop in Linux Mint. So as it says, stay connected. Be productive, so you've got the LibreOffice suite installed out of the box. So effectively that's an open source, a free version of Microsoft Office that you can open. You can even open Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint PowerPoint documents in LibreOffice Writer, Calc and Impress respectively, so you can actually work on and use those different file types straight away, which gets you up and running really quickly without even having to install it once the operating system is installed. And speaking of which, we've come to the end of the installation, so effectively now we can click the Restart Now button and we should be up and running and ready to go. So I'll do that and I'll join you in just a moment at the brand new installed Linux Mint desktop. Okay, so here we are at the logon screen. Now when I rebooted the machine, it did, before it shut down, it told me to remove the installation media and then press enter once the USB stick was taken out. Obviously that's because we don't want it rebooting from the USB stick again. We actually want it to boot off the hard drive now that we've installed the Linux Mint operating system onto it. So hopefully you're back with me and we're all at the logon screen, so I can type in the password I set there and log into the system, and this should come up. Here we go. Now, oh yes, we've got a warning message about video drivers there, which you can ignore. That's basically telling me that I've got hardware acceleration turned off, and the reason for that is I'm actually running this in a virtual machine, which you don't need to worry about because you'll be installing this on a proper physical machine, a proper computer. I'm just using a virtual machine for the purpose of to make the demonstration easier for me to run without affecting my own computer. So I'll just get rid of that because you shouldn't be seeing that anyway on your installation, which leaves us with this Linux Mint welcome screen, which is quite nice because we can read through here and take the time to find out about how all the little bits of the operating system works. It's got all the documentation and it'll guide you through how various things work, so in your own time have a study and a look of that, and or if you want to live dangerously, you can just close the window and go straight to the desktop. Now, the first thing I like to do when I've installed a new operating system is make sure it's up to date. So if you, in fact, we can see there it's not, because hovering over that it says 93 updates are available. So if we click on the little shield icon, and it's telling us at the top that we can switch to a local mirror if we want to, which that should make the download a bit faster because it will mean it's pulling the updates from somewhere closer. So if we click yes there and put in our password, which you always need your password when you're running updates, so basically we're going to choose some mirrors that are nearer where we are. So effectively any of these are in the UK, so that's good. So we've set everything to the United Kingdom and we can OK that. You'll obviously do that for your own region, and that's now updating the cache. So it's changing the mirrors so that I'm going to get the fastest updates available. That's good. And if we close that, and now you can see here we've got all of these updates are available. So quite a long list there because we've just done the new install. So if I click install updates, and you can see here it's telling us what's going to change, and OK to that, and enter your password because you can never put passwords in enough in life, and click authenticate. And in a moment, there we go, it's downloading the package files. And if you want to see more detail of what's going on, you can click that little arrow and it'll show you the exact packages that are all being pulled through off the internet to download, to be updated. And you can see there that it's going to take 42 seconds to download, and then it will start installing them. So I'll let all that run and I'll come back once it's finished. Okay, so as you can see, we're now up to date with all the system updates. Now, while I was off camera, I noticed a couple of things. Firstly, the resolution by default wasn't very good. Now that might be just because I was running in a VM, but I'll just show you what I did just in case the resolution on your computer doesn't look very good. If you come to the menu, the start menu, and you start typing system settings, and you can see here system settings. If we click on that, just make it a bit bigger and scroll down, and we've got under the hardware section we've got display, and here you've got resolution. Now it was only on 800 by 600, which is very low, so I've just bumped up the resolution a little bit to 1280 by 768 just so that it's a little bit of a nicer picture, and then I clicked apply and keep this configuration, and as you can see it's now a nicer size desktop. It's more usable, because 800 by 600 these days is just way too small. So that was one thing that I did while I was off camera. And another thing I've noticed, in the taskbar I've got this little exclamation mark, which basically means if there's any issues it's detected. If you click on there it'll tell you what's going on. So here we go with detected problems and running system checks, and in a moment it should just tell us what it's found. There we go. So it's found that basically for the language that I selected, the United Kingdom, the language pack is currently missing. So all I need to do is click install language packs, and as you can see it's going there to check, and continue and type in our password, and here we go, it's installing the additional packages so that our language, in my case the United Kingdom, is fully supported. Now it's just running a check again to see if there's any other issues. Okay, so it's recommending now that we launch Timeshift. Now Timeshift is a very useful utility that's built into Linux Mint. It basically allows you to take snapshots of the system. So what that means is, and I highly recommend you do this the first time once we've got the computer up and running as we now have, it allows us to take a snapshot of the computer as it is now while everything's new and fresh and working, and then should in the future we run into difficulties and things have broken or things aren't going very well, we can actually restore the operating system back to a previously saved snapshot. So it's a good idea to run these periodically alongside your normal file backups so you can recover the operating system if you need to. But certainly if at no other point, do one when you first set it up like now, so that if worse comes to worse you can get the computer back into a running state as it is now when you first set it up. So to do so, let's launch the Timeshift, obviously put in our password again. So you notice here on the setup wizard that we've got two types of snapshots available, rsync and btrfs. I wouldn't worry too much about the ins and outs of each one, but suffice to say rsync has been around a very long time, and when it comes to things that are important like my data and just reliability and making sure that it works correctly, I tend to like to go with the traditional tried and trusted method that's been around for years. So personally I would use rsync, but feel free to live on the edge and go with a more newer solution of btrfs. So once you've selected the one you're happy with, click next, and it's basically going to calculate, as it says, the size of the system. So it's working out what it needs to back up to make the snapshot of. So we just wait for the bar to cross the screen. Here we go. So it's detected that I've got a hard disk, which again yours is likely to be much bigger than this, but I've just got a 54 gigabyte hard drive available with a 53 gigabyte partition on it. So if I check this box here just to make sure that it's all selected, and that's what we're going to do the snapshot of, and then when that's selected I'm going to click next, and here we can actually get it to run as a scheduled task in the background, so we can effectively set it and forget it. So you can set your snapshot levels for monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, on boot. So depending on how often you want to set that, assuming you want to set it on a schedule, you would just do that here. So let's say we're going to do it monthly and we're going to keep the last two snapshots. Again, we could just keep one snapshot or whatever takes your fancy. So set that here and then click next, and as it's saying, the home directories are excluded by default unless you enable them here. So in other words, as I hopefully hinted at earlier, a snapshot is really for your operating system. That's not to say that you can't snapshot your files as well, but the main purpose is to create a recovery procedure for your operating system should everything go wrong. Files really ought to be treated, I would tend to back them up separately on their own using a different backup method. I would really, unless you have a specific use case for wanting to snapshot your files, I would suggest that you really just back up your snapshot your system, your operating system. But if you want to change that, you can do so here. When you're happy with the options, click next, and setup complete, click finish, and there we go. Timeshift is active, so that's going to run as we set it and create a snapshot for us. You can actually run it manually from here, and if I was to close the window and wanted to come back into that, all I need to do is click the start menu, and if I start typing Timeshift, there we go, it appears, and if we pop in our password, there we go, we're back where we started in the Timeshift. And over time, obviously, this will start to populate with snapshots of the system that you can use should you need to restore to an earlier time at some later point when things have all gone pear-shaped. And there we go, close that off. And that's it. Congratulations, you've successfully installed Linux Mint on your computer. From here, feel free to play around with the system, check out what software is pre-installed in the various categories. One thing probably worth mentioning before we go is the software manager. If you just type software and come to the software manager and just let that load up. Let's make it a bit bigger to fill the screen. And here we go. And the software manager, this is where Linux generally differs quite a lot from Windows. Whereas on Windows you would typically download an exe from some random website. In Linux, most of your software is installed through a software center. You can think of it a bit like an app store. So here we've got the software manager, and you can see it's all nicely laid out. We've got editors picks, we've got categories. So if you're looking for your latest gaming fix, you could come into the gaming category, and then literally we've even got user ratings and reviews. So if we looked at something like Super Tux Kart, which is quite a nice fun game, if we click on that, it'll tell us a bit about the game, give us some screenshots, give us reviews of what people think about it. And if you fancy it, literally it's as easy as clicking on the install button, entering your password, waiting for it to install, and then that's it. It's installed on your system and should be available within the start menu. Again, if it was Super Tux Kart, you'd just type Super Tux Kart and it should appear if you don't want to go searching for it in the menus. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe, and hopefully see you for the next one. Bye.